Hi, she's Catherine, I'm Ine. We're both freelancers and we're busy with online stuff. I'm a web designer, Catherine is busy with online marketing. While it sounds very sexy, and it is probably very sexy to be a freelancer, at times it's also very hard to be one. I mean, you have the clients, they're sometimes difficult to deal with. You have also at a certain moment the feeling that you get up in the morning, you work, you end your day and you go to sleep. And that happens all the time. Normally you can get over that. In our case, we were a little bit stuck in that. And we wondered, is this it? Is this really what we want to do the rest of our lives? Just be working and having exciting clients, but just like the work part was really taking a whole bunch of it. So we were at this point, maybe you know this chart. It's an easy one, it's a very easy one. Are you happy? Continue what you're doing. Are you not happy? Change it. If you don't want to change, stop complaining. Now, we were kind of ending in this complaining part, and we decided at that moment, okay, it has to change. We're doing things differently at this point. So we decided to do an experiment. It's a nomadic adventure. We decided to go on a trip for 1 year, visiting different countries. And as we're both freelancers, and as we're used to work with a laptop, and at these days you have internet available everywhere, we just decided just to pack the laptop and leave. Take our clients, our existing clients, with us, and work from another place, because we already were doing that, but we were not really changing our locations because we're just doing it in Belgium. And I imagine some of you know this phenomena. You go from your sleeping room to your living room, back to your sleeping room, sometimes your office, but you're moving around. Now it's, in our idea, our perspective was maybe we should, instead of moving floors or going to that neighboring cafe, just move it to Africa or Thailand or something else. So I'm going to give you a peek. I told you the story, it's 1 year traveling while working, taking our existing clients, not working with new clients. And I want to give you a peek into those 12 months. And they look like this. We flew into South Africa, where we stayed we lived for 3 months. We moved on to Thailand, where we stayed for another 4 months. And finally, we went for the last 4 months to Argentina, where we did quite some intensive traveling. We set foot in total in 10 countries, because of course, when we were somewhere, we decided to visit the neighboring countries. And we found ourselves a home in every place. So it was not like we were on the road all the time. We definitely took fixed places, and from there we discovered the country. We also found ourselves a way of transport. Sometimes that was a car, sometimes a motorcycle, sometimes something else. And we made new friends all over the place. We worked a lot. We really, really worked a lot. But we also took the time off to spend the weekends and vacations and have some unique experiences. Like, for example, we went to Africa Burn. It's the counterpart of Burning Man. We went surfing, and I'm showing here this nice picture because the pictures of both of us surfing, it's like 2 chickens drowning or something like that. Catherine went on a meditation retreat, and actually, for me, that was also a meditation for a week. And one of the most beautiful things, we went to Patagonia, did some horse riding, and maybe the highlight of our trip was that we walked on a glacier. Yeah, quite different from our experience switching floors. Mind you, we're not telling that things were glamorous all the time. I told you before, we were working quite some time, and also it wasn't glamorous at all times. We had our fights, we had our difficulties. Imagine finding a post office, standing in a row in Belgium. Imagine doing the same thing abroad. So what we're telling you is that it changed us. It changed us a lot. It changed our views on a lot of things, and one of the most important things that changed us is the concept of being a billionaire. You don't have to be rich to have these experiences. We're not rich at all. I mean, maybe the pictures reveal something that aren't, but we're not rich at this moment. We spent some money, but we made our living during the trip. I'm going to hand over to Catherine because a lot of other things change in our minds.
In fact, we think that it's not only the concept of being a millionaire that has changed. We think that the whole world has changed. And I used to refer to my grandmother. If you look at the life of our grandmothers, in general, they're quite the same. Like all different grandmothers, they have quite similar lives. They grow up in a small village in Flanders. And in general, they marry the guy from one of the neighboring villages. And they get married, they have a couple of kids, and they have like 1, maybe 2 jobs their entire lives. And if you compare that to our lives, well, our lives are quite different. We go to Thailand or to Buenos Aires or to Berlin or wherever we want to go. We have several jobs in our entire lives, and sometimes we even change careers. We have different relationships, so we have a lot more possibilities than our grandparents ever had. And we think it's actually a completely new world. Because of all those different possibilities, we can actually design our lives completely differently. Where before, we were stuck in this 9-to-5 template, and this was this template that we all had to live like this. We have the possibility to really design and really be creative with life itself, to tell our own unique story. And we think it's actually several different templates that have changed. The templates from before are outdated for the 21st century. And the first thing we think that has really dramatically changed is the concept of having a career, or the concept of a corporation. When we grew up, and I think maybe it's the same for a couple of you, we were told that actually we had to fit in or we would fail. It's this kind of story of you have to go to college, and then you have to have a job, and you have to have your home and your car and all those things. And it's quite the same story for everyone. And it's a funny idea because it's actually true, and it's very comparable with the way factories are working. A factory is producing goods, and all goods are the same, and it's a very linear, very rational system. And this kind of system was used to show us what kind of lives we had to live. But today we live in a different society. We're no longer living in industrial times. This is time of creative man. So we don't have to follow that rational system. We can just create whatever kind of life we want to. And this is, for me personally, one of my favorite quotes all time. It's a quote from Seth Godin, who said, "We were brainwashed into fitting in and then discovered that the economy wanted people who stood out instead." And for me, that's something personally that really fits me. I once got thrown out of school because I didn't fit in enough. I was 17, I didn't fit in. And for a couple of years, I thought, I failed. They threw me out, I failed. And I started trying to fit in, only to realize that fitting in, it didn't work for me. And it was only the moment that I realized I had to be myself and I had to create my own story, my own life, that things started falling together again. I think the second thought is, and I think you've heard it before today, it's be authentic, be yourself, be your unique, authentic self. Because these are the things that stand out. These are the stories that stand out. We live in a society where there's an abundance of information, and it's only the stories that stand out that get picked up. For us personally, when we started telling our story on the internet and giving presentations and stuff like that, this is one of the important lessons we learned. In the beginning, we told our story, and we talked about the beautiful beaches, and we talked about the cheap food in Thailand, and we talked about all the amazing stuff. But we didn't talk about how sometimes our trip, we were fighting so much because you're 24/7 together, and it's really hard. And we were not talking about the clients. Sometimes when you're in Thailand and you have this really difficult client, sometimes it's really, really difficult. So we didn't talk about the vulnerable stuff, but actually it's the vulnerable stuff that makes you human. So when you tell a story, this has to be part of it. The third thing that we think has extremely changed, or is completely different today than before, it's the impact of digital. And digital is more than having just a Facebook profile. Digital is actually changing profoundly the way we are working and the way we are living. As Ine said, we're both freelancers, we're both working online, and so 75% of our job are easily done through the internet. And it really doesn't matter where we are. And I can imagine there are a lot of people here for who counts exactly the same. But we are the first generation that isn't stuck in a certain place. We can move around. We can become location independent. The same goes for our homes. Before, when you were traveling or you were somewhere else, you missed a lot of things from home. You didn't have your books along, maybe 2 or 3, but you didn't have your books along. You didn't have your music. Your friends, they were very difficult to communicate with, or your mom. Today we have our iPad with us, and we have all our books. We go on the internet and we watch movies using Movie, for example, so we don't need our local video store. My mom, actually, she said at a certain point, it's funny, when you call me, it's like you're living in Ghent, and I was in Buenos Aires at that time. It didn't feel differently, because we just take Skype and we started calling. So I think you're not missing as much. Before, you had the impression you were traveling or you were somewhere else and you were missing something. And I think you're taking a lot of these things along today. Barbex is going to talk later today about peer-to-peer, about his peer-to-peer network. Very interesting story I'm looking forward to. For me, peer-to-peer, it's one of the most important innovations in our time. And also, when you're traveling, peer-to-peer really changes the way you travel, the way you're able to integrate. I'll give you a few examples of things we used. Before, when you were traveling, you had your Lonely Planet, and Lonely Planet had some restaurants and some hotels and some churches, and that was your connection with the place. Today, when we are traveling, we sometimes still have a Lonely Planet, but very often we use, for example, couchsurfing. And couchsurfing, I don't know, does everyone know what couchsurfing is? Okay. So we met some really brilliant people. We met up with a movie maker in Cape Town and an editor in Ecuador, for example. And those people showed us around. We stayed at their place. And we had the impression to really fit in, to really connect, not being the tourist just visiting churches, but really being part of this local community. We also used Twitter a lot. Ine actually started doing it, and it really paid off by following people in Cape Town, for example, with the hashtag Cape Town, connecting with some people. And all of a sudden, we discovered some hidden gems of restaurants that you would never find in a Lonely Planet. Or you would never, even some locals were like, how did you know about this restaurant? It was just because we were integrating and connecting completely through all those peer-to-peer networks.
This is my thought. It's the last thought. It's also very important. When you leave, you're very scared. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen, and you're pretty afraid of failing. Now, there is this thing that your mother always says, like, be careful. Probably everybody knows this. Before you go to this cute party, then be careful tonight. Or before you go on a trip. Now, we learned this phrase, be careful, in a different way, by a guy, Timothy Ferris, who says, envision your worst case scenario. It's also be careful. Be careful. Think about what might happen. And once you define this idea, what might happen, what is the worst thing that can happen on your trip, then it's not that scary anymore. Moreover, you can prepare for it. When it happens, you will have a solution. So just leaving that and having that idea, you can leave without any fear. Now, I'm going to recap everything we said. So, first of all, when you rethink the concept of a career, and you think of it totally different than you did before, you add some juice of the digital reality today, you add yourself, which is very important, and you think of this good mom's advice, be careful, then the result is stunning. It can be endless possibilities. You can fill them in like you want to fill them in. We're all able to make and to create our own story. We can tell it the way we want to. And that means also you. I mean, we're telling a story here of our trip, which was a trip around the world, but it doesn't need to be a trip around the world. It can be somebody here sitting in the audience and saying, okay, I want to go freelance, or somebody else who says, no, I want to go part-time working because I'm sick and tired of the 40-hour week. It can be anything you want. And actually, there is only one thing you have to remember. It always seems impossible until it's done. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for them? Dirk? Yeah.
I have two small questions. One, did your clients know that you were away? Or
Did your clients know that you were away?
Or did you care about that? And did it change your work as well? Are you a different marketeer because you have been in Thailand and Argentina? Or then you would have been staying in Ghent?
I think to answer the first question, we did a test trip before we went for 1 year. And the test trip was 1 month Thailand, and we didn't tell anyone. That was the test. Just to figure out, it's a tip actually from Timothy Ferriss. He says, try it. And afterwards, when you tell your clients and they're like, oh, it's not going to work, you tell them, actually, we've done it before and you haven't noticed it. So we tried that test and it worked. So when we left for 1 year, they knew about it. But we came back in between the 3 different destinations we came back. So we had like 3 months of Cape Town and then we went back to Belgium for 3 weeks or something. So we had some client moments. To answer the second question...
What was the second question again?
Did it change our work?
Yeah, definitely did. I mean, yeah, it definitely changed our work. For me, I decided to focus on different things. Before I was doing a whole lot, the whole concept, and afterwards I said no. Or during the trip I changed and I said I only want to specialize in this one part for this year and see if it works. Also, take less clients. When you're a freelancer, you have the habit, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do next month, so I'm going to take these jobs. This year we said it's not about the money. We know how much we have to earn each month to be able to do what we want to do. It's not more than when you're in Belgium, so it's even less. And then at that point you can say, okay, I skip this dull project because really, I'm sitting in this earthly place. I'm not going to spend my life on a boring project. And afterwards, we kept on doing that.
I think also personally for us, it was our own. It wasn't our intention, but when we look back at it, it was a very good marketing for ourselves because people heard our story, and we like to work for clients who are not in the box, and so I noticed, and I think also, we have more clients like that coming towards us now. And I have several clients that I would not have had if we wouldn't have done this. So I think it really changed us. And I learned a couple of things of this story, of course, to implement for my clients, but that's another story.
Are there more questions?
The worst moment during the travel, when you say no, it's impossible to do it.
That was definitely Argentina.
Argentina was very difficult.
Buenos Aires was very difficult because it was not what we expected it. I mean, our idea, we never prepared very well. The only thing we had for a trip was the first 2 nights in a hotel, and all the rest we arranged on the spot itself because we prepared to have everything ready in case something bad happened, and also to take the job along. But the place itself, we never rented anything before. So when we arrived in Buenos Aires, we expected something similar from the trips before, which is a sea. Buenos Aires is near the water. It's not. It's a dirty river that stinks all the time.
It's huge.
It's huge. It's 12 million people, and it was not what we expected. I think it's a very nice place to go on a holiday, but for us to live there was very hard. And then you get stuck in a way that you don't find the place you want to live, you don't know where you want to go.
It was very expensive also. It was a lot more expensive than the other places. And so you end up in a place where you're not sure you really want to be there. And then all of a sudden you have to pay like double rent you would pay in Belgium, because short-term rental is always more expensive. And then you start fighting with, because I want to take that apartment, and Ine says no, maybe we have to go somewhere else. And then all of a sudden it's 1 month further, and you haven't done anything, and you're just hanging around, and then it becomes very difficult. For me, the most difficult thing is I'm not sure if I would be able to do it by myself, because there's a lot of things you have to organize. So it was good to be the 2 of us. but at the same time, every small decision you have to make it together. Which makes if one of both is not making a decision, well, you're stuck. And if the decision has to be, we need an apartment, well, you're really screwed at that time. So that was
Yeah, she's pointing at me now, right?
difficult moment.
No, I think that's the whole. I think there was something else, but I forgot. Like what was really.
What I found quite difficult at times was normally if you do something, because like this we read about it, and there are several people in America and some other countries that have done it before us. And one of the tips they give is like, if you do this, you have to be an independent for a couple of years before. So everything has to be running smoothly, because this is an extra stress and this is an extra. And I hadn't been freelancing for that long of time. Ine had, but I hadn't. And we kind of, we decided to go anyway, but for me it was quite difficult at times. It was actually too fast, too much too fast. And at times that was that was not easy. So, yeah.
I have a last question for you. Do you have your next adventures planned? Will you do it again and again, or is this a once-in-a-lifetime adventure?
For us, both of us, I think, we decided that the trip was a very nice adventure, but it would have been easier when we would spend 6 months in one place instead of 3 months, 3 months, 3 months. So if we do it, we probably go to the same place again for 3 months, or go to another place for 6 months.
I think it's...
if.
Well,
No.
I think we will always. It changed our way of living. Even if I go, for example, to London for 1 week, I'm experiencing it differently. I'm always more in this global mindset, and we feel it also when we're talking with people around us. We are always looking globally, and so it changes, and it will forever change us. And I'm pretty sure we will leave again one day. But maybe not for a year.
She's not telling you that she has been nagging about going to Portugal for 3 months.
Okay. Are there any last questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. And